Hi, welcome to Filmi Ladies, episode one. I am Pitu. I'm going to be your host today, and I'm joined by Beth, who is my very dear friend and co host and a fellow Filmi lady. And today we're going to talk about the Alia Bhatt and Shefali Shah movie Darlings, and going to digress a little bit and also talk about female revenge movies. Beth and I wanted to start this podcast because we love talking about movies, popular culture, TV shows, books, and we kind of wanted to talk about all of the above things with sort of like a women-centric perspective, like just talking about how we feel as women. And we kind of also wanted to celebrate women in these fields. So having said that, I'm going to ask Beth now why she asked me to watch Darlings, because it was actually her idea to watch it.
I mean, I feel like I can't think of another movie that's come out recently that has so much to offer us to talk about women with, because we have, a woman director, we have the stars, it's obviously a story about domestic violence against women and women's agency and all those things, because it's just such a meaty movie, there's so much happening in it to talk about. And I think, like when I saw the trailer, I thought, oh, this looks good,
Yeah.
And I don't have that reaction to trailers terribly often. I love a dark comedy, which I think this has moments of, and which are fairly rare in mainstream Hindi films anyway, I think. So that sounded promising. And then, we were trying to get our act together this summer to do this, and it lined up. We know we're a couple weeks late on the bulk of the dialogue about Darlings, but I think this movie will stick around for a long time and have a lot to offer for a long time. So I'm glad that we're going to talk about it.
Yeah, it's deliciously dark. And I think one of the movies that you and I really love and we've spoken at length about in the past is actually Khoon Bhari Maang, which is so old, but such a cult classic, so iconic. And there's so much to love about that movie. That is yet another revenge film where you have Rekha, coming back from the crocodiles and taking revenge on Kabir Bedi and Sonu Walia. You have the 80s power shoulders, the glitter and the sequins and the good music. It's just so over the top and enjoyable. Like it's such a good movie. And now I don't think Darlings is ever going to become that level of favorite for me. Like Khoon Bhari Maang is just, it's on its own. It has its own place. But I do also like the fact that this one was also so deliciously dark and that she takes revenge, because like revenge films starring women are so few and far between. We counted what, 4 between us? 5?
Yeah, they're not as many as we want.
What did you think about Anjaam? Because I made you watch that.
Yeah, so believe it or not, I hadn't seen it until just the other day. It was one of those films that had been on my, kind of list for a long time, especially as a Shah Rukh fan, but I just figured the violence was going to be too much for me. So I got my teddy bear out and I held my teddy bear tight and I watched Anjaam. I did actually break it over like 3 different viewings, mostly because I was not because I was scared, but it's a lot. That movie is a lot. And I actually started to write a blog post about it. And then I was like, I don't even know what I think, because it's hard to know what to do with movies like that sometimes, because there's a lot of 90s-ness to it that that never resonates with me. It's just not a group of aesthetics or whatever that I really relate to. And obviously I didn't grow up with it, but and I think this movie is also doing that thing where it's exploiting certain kinds of things while also saying they're bad. So it's as a lot of very violent movies do, right? So for example, like does the police officer really have to threaten to rape her as well as to kill her? Of course he does. It's not Hollywood, right? So so it's kind of hard. It's a slog, right? It is a lot going on in that movie. However, I think the performances are excellent. Obviously the finale is amazing. I don't know if we want to get into spoilers of 28-year-old movie.
I mean, it's a 90s movie at this point. If people haven't seen it, I have no sympathy for them like having a problem with the spoilers.
And I feel like there was so much about it that reminded me of Khoon Bhari Maang, which is, six years earlier or something like that. But they just like cranked it up even more. And it's amazing to think about a movie being more than Khoon Bhari Maang. It obviously the elements are different in some ways, but like it really but yeah, performances are amazing. The song that you pointed out where it's Madhuri in one take dancing around,
Yeah,
that was so menacing and great.
it
Um,
was so good. Just the foreshadowing, and that was so good.
and I
Yeah.
love things like how the mother-in-law is like, no, she's healing you so that she can kill you. And everyone else is like, no, she's not.
She would never do that.
She knows. I love that every single man in that movie is I'd say kind of neutral at best, and most of them are actively horrible.
Yeah.
Because so when her husband slaps her,
Yeah.
I did not see that coming. And I was like, am I supposed to be delighted by her wifely devotion to this horrible man? Because he's horrible too. They're all horrible. Is he
Yeah.
less horrible than Shahrukh? Yeah, but he's
Yeah.
still horrible because he slaps his wife, and that's a no for me. But
Yeah.
it really is just an onslaught, and there were several moments
Yeah.
where I went,
Right. But the one thing I do like about Anjaam, even though it is very problematic in so many ways, and I like that about Khoon Bhari Maang, I also like that about Ek Hasina Thi, another favorite, is that in all of those movies, when the woman has just had it, like she's had it, she completely like commits to the revenge, and she commits to the vendetta, and she goes for it, and she does it. Like Ek Hasina Thi is such an old movie at this point. I can't even remember when I saw it. I saw it when it had just come out, so it's at least been 15 years, I want to say. And the last scene in that movie where you're like, okay, is Urmila actually going to do the bad things to Saif, or is she going to chicken out? And she literally leaves him in that cave. He's shackled, he can't get away, and he's just going to die a slow, painful death, and she just walks away. And I was like, what? She just walked away, and I loved it. So I think that's also what I liked about Darlings. Well, I do have one bone to pick with Darlings, but I've noticed that in Bollywood movies, it's fine for the hero to get his revenge. It's fine. He can do whatever he wants. He can do all sorts of horrible things. Case in point, Shah Rukh Khan in Bazigar, right? Like the guy who's actually, tormented his family and like created all these problems in his life is Dilip Tahil. And he doesn't just take revenge on Dilip Tahil, he even pushes our Shilpa Shetty, who's done absolutely nothing, to him just off the balcony of the building because he can, because it's all justified. So it's kind of like if you're a hero, you can do whatever you want in the pursuit of your revenge. We've seen countless Amitabh Bachchan movies like that also, where he's the angry young man. He does basically whatever he wants. But with the female characters, often they pull back. There's this sort of like martyrdom, or it's almost like, no, she's going to be the better person because women have to be the better person. And I'm always like, no, I don't want to be the better person. I want to be petty and spiteful and horrible, and I want to cut you. And I would really, really appreciate it if the actress did that too. And they just don't.
Yeah.
And I think even with Darlings, that was one of the problems I had with it, was with the finale. How did you feel about the finale?
So I rewatched the whole movie again in preparation for this, because I mean, again, there's just that much in it that I was already, 2 weeks later, I was all ready to rewatch it. Is she a frog or is she a scorpion? And I think the film is saying that Alia is a frog, but that she deserves a scorpion on her side, and her mother is a scorpion, I think. And maybe fate is a little bit of a scorpion or something, because obviously none of these people make the decision for, spoiler alert now, turn this off now if you don't want to know the spoilers of Darling, for him to be hit by a train. He just is hit by a train, because that is
maybe the train is a scorpion too.
Like
they're all scorpions.
The train organization for whom he works mows him down, because it's like this, it's a bit Deus Ex Machina, I guess, very literally a machine, which is what he deserves. And they all get to be free of the responsibility of actually killing him. And I'm glad for them. However, the question about her agency really does linger. And I love, to leap us ahead just a second, I love that the very end of the film is this tag about what happens next. about how she's going to live her life after. We don't leave her there on the train track having to decide how she feels. She obviously feels great and it's deserved. And she gets a scooter and rides it by herself and buys a ticket for one to the movies. I know so many people who won't go to the movies by themselves, regardless of what their situation is, right? She goes, she enjoys herself on her own, and it's lovely. And of course, she learns her true backstory, her mother's story. So she's maybe a little bit of a wiser frog at the end, but I think she's a frog. But there's a scorpion. There are a couple of scorpions on her side, and I'm glad for that.
I am too. But I have to say, like, I was enjoying the movie a lot until that point, where it's, you know, her mom, it's Shefali Shah, it's Alia Bhatt, it's the Qasim, that guy, he's there, you know, Zulfi is there, everybody is there. And of course, we have, you know, Hamza, Vijay Varma is there. And it's like, okay, they're going to do it. They've tied him to the tracks. The train's going to come. It's like going to destroy him. It's going to be great. I'm cheering. The Schadenfreude is happening. I'm enjoying myself. And then she's like, no, no, no. And I was like, are you kidding me? Girl, don't no them. Let the train mow him down. And I was like, seriously? Like, I definitely had that moment where then she's like, I'm not, you know, I am better than this. And I'm like, but why? Why do you have to be better? It was so disappointing. And so I think to some extent also Shefali Shah, I feel like she kind of was the voice of the audience in a way, because even in that moment you have Shefali Shah going, no, are you crazy? He'll never let you go. Like, you need to, you know, do this. And then I remember that moment where it was so good. Like, they untie him and he keeps coming at her. And you would think he's almost had like a brush with death, with like an oncoming train. You would think he would just like scurry away into the night like the cockroach he is, but he doesn't. He keeps coming at her and she keeps saying, you need to back away, like you need to back off. And then he says this horrible line where he's like, I'm going to kill you the way I killed your daughter. And I was just like, are you shitting me? And then just the look on her face where she's so horrified. And I was like, okay, now is she going to push him in front of the train? Come on, now you got to do it. But then the train just takes him out. So there was a part of me where I was just kind of like, really? I felt a little bit cheated. I get that the movie's saying that she's a frog and not a scorpion and all that jazz, but I did not enjoy that aspect. But maybe I'm just bloodthirsty.
It's hard not to be after what we watched, right?
Right?
Like, you have to want him to die because he's absolutely unredeemed and irredeemable. And I love that the film makes no, you know, like, yes, his boss is a jerk to him. Yes, life has clearly turned out smaller than he thinks he deserves. Blah, blah, blah. But he's a horrible petty tyrant. He's a horrible abuser, an alcoholic who refuses to do anything about it. You know, there's no attempt to be like, oh, but he's got a hard life at work.
No, it's just there's no excuses made for him.
Yeah. And like, yes, that is true. And he is still an irredeemable abuser who deserves.
Yeah. What did you think about Vijay Varma's acting? I thought he was splendid.
Yeah, just stellar. Absolutely, absolutely top notch.
Yeah.
I don't even really know how to describe how great I thought he was, because he switches, you know, he switches modes. Was it you, Pitu, who was talking about him being charming?
Yes.
So tell me how.
I love that like rakish charm he had.
Yeah.
That's sorry.
Oh, no, I didn't get charming from him, but also I you know, I'm still relying on subtitles. So, you know, I'm sure there's some issues there, because he's just so awful. He's so awful.
I love the fact that they, you know, the way they showed him doing those classic like abuser techniques, like, you know, he's beating her up and then he's love bombing and then he's trying to wheedle and, you know, all of that. There's that scene where she, in a fit of rage, just gathers up all the tchotchkes he's given her over the years, and they're all these romantic, cheap, like Valentines and teddy bears and cutesy, mushy stuff, and she just, you know, grabs it all and like just destroys all of it. I loved that his character wasn't just like a caricature. I think they could very easily have just made him this caricature, and instead I think the way that he was written and also the way that Vijay Varma portrayed Hamza, he was kind of like these guys that we've all kind of sort of met, where there's something about them that they're charming and they're attractive, but there's something that just pings your radar and you're like, no, I don't trust you. No, I don't want to get into an elevator with you. No, I don't want to give you a number. And I don't understand why you're hitting on my friend, because there's something about you that's wrong, but you can't quite verbalize it. And I think he kind of fits that mold where it's kind of like he's charming and he's kind of cute, but you know there's something lurking underneath. And I think he just did that so well. And I was like, who is this guy? I don't remember seeing him in any movie. He was like a revelation.
Spectacular. I love that there's a couple of interactions between him and Zulfi, so that you get to see that he's like this with men also.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the reasons, I guess the film is saying, like, this is another reason to know you don't need to feel empathy for this guy, because he doesn't just take it out on his wife. He's like this with everybody, and his mother-in-law, right? Like the fact that he hits the mother-in-law is quite something. But so when he and Zulfi bump into each other in the kind of courtyard is a scene, but then when Zulfi is going to administer a dose of medicine and he goes after him, like belittling his writing talent. And you're like, oh,
like you never amount to anything.
This amount of weakness, and instantly upon learning something about someone, he tries to turn it to his own advantage and makes them smaller with it. And you're like, yeah, no, this guy's got to go.
Well, even the kind of like subplot that has to do with sort of the building having received bids from this builder, he basically is holding the entire building hostage because he's the one holdout who will not sign for the building to go in for this project. But it's obvious he does that because he gets a kick out of it, because now he has everyone groveling to him and everyone's like, will you please sign? Like, can you not sign? What do we have to do to get you to sign? And it makes him feel good. Like he's going to string them along until the end of time, because it gives him a cheap thrill.
Yeah, he's a narcissistic abuser, and there's never going to be anything different.
Yeah. I liked how they showed the other characters and the reactions to him. The beautician who lives underneath, who has her beauty salon underneath, and every time there's like these sounds of violence from above, she's just kind of like, increasing the volume on the radio. But then she shows up at his prayer meeting after his death, and she can't even be bothered to fake grief. She's just like, oh, he's dead, good riddance. I was like, I like you, can we be friends?
The amount of knowing looks in this film is off the charts, and I love it. And it's not only the women, but it's primarily the women. But the silent exchanges in this movie are just wow.
Yeah. How did you feel about the butcher, about the Kasai?
He's great.
He was so good.
Love Rajesh Sharma. He's always fun to watch. And what a powerful performance that uses extremely few words.
Mostly he's just doing this. He's just cutting like legs of meat and stuff.
And when they introduce him, and then as the film goes on, you're like, oh, did he butcher somebody? Nope. He's just a helper. He didn't actually do anything.
And he had like one dialogue? He had that one dialogue where he says something about, why are you always buying boneless meat or something? Right. Yeah. But I also love the fact that towards the end, when we finally discover what happened to Shefali Shah's husband, Alia Bhatt's dad, and we discover that he was kind of the guy who helped her out. But I love that they didn't cheapen it by making it out to be, oh, he had a thing for her, or they had a romance. No, he was just a guy who was doing the right thing. And now so many years later, he's doing it for the next generation. Like he's just a decent guy who doesn't say much, but kind of helps out when he thinks that he should. I like that angle too.
Mm-hmm. No.
What did you think about, I think we spoke a bit about, the police and their frustration with the lack of FIRs being filed.
Yeah, they were really interesting because I think, India, US, both of us are in situations where a lot of us are not prone to portray the police favorably these days. High time to make some adjustments to those portrayals. But I liked that the police were essentially good and trying to do right by these citizens they're supposed to protect, but then encountering the very real frustration of people will not come forward, or they start to, and then they don't. And that's super common, as we know, in all sorts of crimes, but particularly domestic violence. So it was interesting that that's treated kind of with a light hand with the like that becomes almost a comedy track. But I thought that worked.
Yeah.
For me, somehow that still worked. And I thought both the actors playing the police officers were really, three of them, because there's the woman also.
Yeah.
I thought they were all really good, and their sense of frustration was, I thought totally appropriate. And I thought the actors did a great job at like the right amount of, again, of eye rolls and other like,
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
commentary. It was great.
I liked some of the comedic sort of touches or tone in the movie. I felt like they did it well, because I think when you're tackling a subject like domestic violence and abusive marriages and stuff like that, it can be so hard to balance that out with any kind of humor, because it's just so difficult to do well, that it's almost safer for, I think, a writer and a director to just be like, no, I'm just going to make this very dark, very gritty movie, and there's going to be no jokes and no nothing, because the risk of going wrong is so high. I mean, a movie that I recently saw that has nothing to do with Darlings, but where I felt like they just couldn't figure out the tone, was Jug Jug Jio. I think you saw that as well.
Yeah.
And it's like the movie kept vacillating between being a movie about a married couple whose marriage just isn't working out and they are considering getting divorced, and a comedy where it's just like cheap forwarded WhatsApp jokes. It was so stupid. It was like you had good performances on the one hand by Varun Dhawan and Kiara Advani, and they're like going at each other's throats in that really good scene. And then 2 seconds later, you have an Anil Kapoor just being a complete buffoon. And I was like, can you just pick a lane? I mean, that movie could have been so much better if they had just picked a lane or figured out how to balance their tone. And I think that Darlings actually did that incredibly well with the humor and stuff. Like even with Zulfi, like he was a character that definitely made us chuckle. Like when we discovered that Shefali Shah is actually the one that he kind of is lusting after.
Yeah, it was sweet.
So that was cute. What did you think of the cinematography and the like the light and dark and the sets?
Wonderful.
Yeah.
There was a sense, mostly through the architecture and all, I think, of the kind of claustrophobic nature of, or at least potentially claustrophobic nature of lives there. And they did really interesting things with it, like how the mother and daughter call each other, even though they live in the same building. And then when the daughters, when they stop talking to each other, what that looks like. And they don't really, the film doesn't comment on this a whole lot, but it does a little, the fact that there's bystanders to all this violence and nobody does anything. That was really important to show, again, for reality, but it was also a reminder to the audience, like, you can call yourself on the side of Alia in this film, but are you actually, you going to do anything the next time you learn about this in your own life? We bet you won't. People don't. What did you think? I know you obviously have vast Bombay experience. So how did it work?
Yes. So it was so funny. Like the movie was so clearly shot in Mumbai, which is where I'm from. And within the first 5 minutes of watching the movie, I was like, I bet you this is supposed to portray Baikala. And I bet you it's shot over there. And they did say it was set in Baikala at some point, but I don't know if it was shot there, but it was so evocative. I was just like, those lanes and the maze that it is, and the cars honking and the taxis, and just just the way that it was portrayed. I was like, this is classic, like old Mumbai, like you're talking about, like Baikala and Mahalakshmi and those areas. So I really enjoyed that. I loved how packed their apartments were, because I have a theory that, because I've seen this a lot in my own family and with my friends, that I have a theory that the smaller your apartment in Mumbai, the more you are a pack rat. There is no concept of minimalism in my family or in my friends' families, where it's like they will live in these tiny little apartments, but they refuse to get rid of anything. And it's all old stuff they don't need. And there's like trunks and trunks full of stuff. My mother still has all of my report cards from primary kindergarten. She does. And one time I opened this old cupboard she has. Even the cupboard is gigantic. It's like, why do you have this gigantic cupboard? But I opened it. And I was reading my report cards. And of course, it was like 5-year-old Preeti getting a report from the teacher saying, talks too much and looks out the window during class. And I was like, yeah, nothing's changed. But
I am.
yeah, like nothing's changed. But I love that, every time you see Alia Bhatt's house, or even especially when you see Shefali Shah's house, like every time she enters her apartment, it's just packed with stuff. And I think that also gives rise to that feeling of like claustrophobia. There's never any space, either inside or outside. Even outside, if you just want to go for a walk, you're dodging hawkers and, people and taxis and stuff like that, and there's just never any peace and quiet. And I love that when they kind of capture Hamza. Is That's not the word, right? But
Yeah.
I love that there's all this like darkness in the apartment. Like she tapes all the windows and everything. So that was really good too.
I wanted to bring up something from an article I read talking about women-driven revenge films in Hindi cinema. This is talking specifically about the relationship of Hindu mythology in some of these films, the role of it. And the author of this piece is Bidatri Chowdhury, a friend on Twitter, and we'll link to her. So let me read you this passage and get your thoughts on it and how it fits with Darlings. For a country where religion and pop culture often intersect on screen, the comparisons go a long way in legitimizing female revenge narratives. In a way, such stories are a reminder of the power of latent female anger that's as old as our mythologies. Moreover, the women in these films are widows, a status that is socially, economically, and sexually disempowered Indian women. It is a feminist questioning of that discrimination when these women, their status diminished by the loss of their husbands, find themselves empowered enough to become exactly like men, the usual carriers of the revenge narrative. Angry women don't need to be goddesses for their anger to be legitimate, though. I look forward to the day Hindi cinema recognizes that angry women are just as human as caring, loving, and maternal women. And I felt like Darlings does that, right?
I think so too. Yeah, like especially in with Alia Bhatt and even with her mother, like with Alia, you have those very sort of childish kind of dreams and milestones that she's written where she's like, buy a house, have my first baby, have my second baby. Like it's so sweet. And then even with Shefali Shah, it's like she's clearly one of the Scorpions and she's very, protective of her daughter to the point that she's willing to frame Zulfi, who is one of the few fine, upstanding people. She's willing to like frame him and be like, oh yeah, he did everything, just like arrest him. And he even says stories like, you're literally trying to frame me and get me into trouble after everything I did to help you. Like seriously. So she will go to any lengths to protect her daughter and get her out of the clutches of this horrible man. But at the same time, they balance it so beautifully with her love and her protective instinct towards her child, and also her own defense of herself so many years ago at the hands of her husband. So, I mean, yeah, I think Darlings did that incredibly well as well.
Yeah. And the fact that they move on these things to get rid of a husband, not because the husband is dead. And that's, I was trying to think about other movies where the husband is not dead. And the only one I can think of is Sat Khoon Maaf, where she kills her husband.
Right.
I don't remember that film super well. I remember really liking it. And whether those are all revenge plots, I can't quite remember. Another revenge movie I wanted to talk about just super quickly is Kahaani, which is one of my very favorite Hindi films, but
so
that one is so buried under other layers of story and lies and all. It doesn't always, I don't always think of it as a revenge film, but of course it is. I think of it as a detective movie, really, but it is actually.
Yeah, I think of it more as like a whodunit, maybe.
Yeah. But it is a revenge film at core, and of course it's very strong with the goddess mythology and everything.
Yes, totally.
Like Anjaam and somewhat like Darlings, takes the images of nurturing women and flips it over to become, life.
Yeah, and somewhat literally. I mean, Vidya Balan literally is also pregnant in the movie.
Right.
So, with the nurturing and the protecting her baby and all of that. I actually recently read a funny quote by Vijay Varma. He said that after his mother watched the movie, she called him in a big panic. And she said that she was I think afraid that no one's ever going to marry him. And he was like, why do you think no one's going to marry me? And she said, because his portrayal of Hamza was so good and people are going to think he's this terrible monster now. And so he's never going to get married. And I just thought that was like such a cute thing to say, but also such an Indian mom thing to say. God forbid you do such a good job as like a horrible antagonist in a movie that you'll just never get married. Whatever will we do? But I'm looking forward to seeing more of Vijay Varma. I was trying to think, do we have any other actor who could have pulled off his role? Because it was just so he was just so good, and I was really struggling. I feel like maybe a
Mm.
young Irfan Khan could have done it.
What would you think about, again, the age is wrong, but I feel like Nawaz could have done it.
I don't know, because I just don't know if Nawaz can. I just don't see
He
Nawaz being
doesn't
able
have
to
the
pull off
like
the
the
charm.
charming thing that yeah, that
He's
you
just
were
not
talking about.
charming enough. That's where Irfan would be able to do it.
Yeah,
Like
that's true.
Irfan can be charming, Rajkumar Rao can be charming and menacing, but
Mm.
I feel like with Nawaz, it's just he's so straight up. Like I can't see him doing anything slimy. I don't know. Maybe I have no idea, but it's so sad that I literally can't think of anyone else who could do it.
Well, I mean, and you and I would not have picked this guy for this role either because we don't know enough about him. So whoever cast him,
Yeah, when
bravo.
I Googled him after watching the movie, I was like, who is this guy? He is amazing. Like, who is this person? Vijay Varma. I've never heard of him.
Right.
I Googled him and I discovered he was in Gully Boy. And I saw Gully Boy in the theater and then forced everybody I knew to go watch it. And it was so good. But it was very much a Ranveer Singh fest, as it should be.
Mhm.
And I did remember Siddhant Chaturvedi really in it, and then Alia to some extent. But I saw a few stills of Vijay Varma in Gully Boy, and then I was like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. So I don't know how he landed this movie, but I'm so glad he did because he is awesome.
I hope
And
it
also,
really,
I do wish, yeah, he's so good, but I do wish we could see more of Shefali Shah. Can we have more Shefali Shah, please?
like 10 years ago plus when Amrita of Khandan podcast and I we had a podcast for a while and there were so many episodes where we ended with more Konkana Sen Sharma, please. So I'm just going to update that a little bit. I would still like more of her and I would also more like more of Shefali Shah.
I would like more of both of them. I think my favorite Shefali Shah movie probably is still Dil Dharakne though. And especially that scene where she's just like angrily eating the whole bunch of cake while she's crying is one of my favorite, most relatable movies in cinema because we have all done that. I have definitely
Oh yeah.
cried at 3 a.m. and stuffed my face with chocolate cake. It's actually very satisfying. So that is my favorite Shefali Shah moment of
it works.
yeah, it works. It just makes you feel so much better afterwards. It's really hard to cry after you've eaten like a whole plate of chocolate cake. But yeah, we need more Shefali Shah for certain. How do you feel about Alia? Do you want more of Alia?
Oh, I love her. I have to admit that at Student of the Year, I was like, and
I have still not seen that movie.
Oh, we should watch it. It's terrible.
No, why? Why should we watch it?
Well, because when you look at what they've all done since then, it really is. I mean, Karan as talent scout is probably, the lesson there. But, I think her next film was Highway, right? And I loved her
I
in
think
that.
so.
So I'm very impressed by her. And obviously it's been an amazing year for her. Her role in RRR is completely forgettable. Like, who cares? But I'm glad for her that she gets to be in this mega successful film. But obviously she's having quite the year. And although I do not feel particularly optimistic about Brahmastra, but we'll see.
Oh, about Brahmastra, yeah. I actually really liked her in Gangubai Kathiawadi. I thought she was amazing in that film.
Right.
And then I think probably Urta Punjab is still, I feel like Urta Punjab is still my favorite Alia Bhatt movie, followed by Gangubai. But she was amazing in Gangubai as well. But is it bad of me to say that I'm tired of her?
I mean, she's been in our faces a lot this year, right? So
yeah, I feel like she's really good, and I'm glad that she was so amazing in Gangubai Kathiawadi because if it had been cast as well, I can see how the movie would have been horrible. The only person I can imagine doing justice to that role would have been Vidya Balan, but she would have had to be younger maybe to do that role. But I'm just a little bit tired of Alia. It's like. Like I just feel I keep seeing her. Like now she's coming in Brahmastra. It's like, do we not have anyone else? Can we just see someone else for a while? I just feel she's getting really overexposed because at this point, as much as I love her performances and I think she's absolutely amazing, and I've seen so many of her movies in the theater. I saw Razi in the theater. I saw Urta Punjab in the theater. I'm just a little bit tired. I just want to see someone else for a while now. Like if she took like a tiny sabbatical or something, I wouldn't mind because I'm just bored. So
that's fair.
Yeah. It's kind of the Ayushmann Khurrana thing because do you remember for a while he just kept doing so many movies and then I was like, dude, go take a vacation. Like just go to go to Hawaii for like 2 years or something. I'm so tired of you. But I do think some of these actors do get really overexposed and then people get tired of them.
Mm.
Okay. Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
I can't imagine anyone listening to this has not already seen the movie, but if you haven't, please do. We've basically spoiled it for you, but that it's still worth the trip. We are really hoping that this podcast can have some kind of old school blog commenting style interaction. So leave us a comment here on YouTube about your thoughts about it, or your favorite female-driven revenge movies, woman-driven revenge movies. We are on Twitter at Filmi Ladies. We are on Instagram at Filmi Ladies. We have a Facebook page, Filmi Ladies. So you can
We're everywhere.
All those places. So yeah, we would love to have conversations, and we're hoping that each subsequent episode will follow up on some of the comments from the previous one. So, please do get in touch with us. Yeah, what are your final thoughts about Darlings?
Loved it. Really enjoyed watching it. I think everyone should see it. It's awesome, and we need more of these revengey movies because we're bloodthirsty people and we like them. And more Vijay Varma, please. More Shefali Shah. Maybe not quite as much Alia Bhatt as much as we like her acting. But yeah, great movie. Go watch it. It's streaming on Netflix. Okay, so I think we are done for today, and then we'll see you pretty soon. I think the subject we have decided on for our next episode is going to be inexplicable crushes, because I was judging Beth for the people she likes. And then, of course, she turned it back on me and she was like, well, what about the people you like? So it's going to be on inexplicable crushes, and we are looking forward to recording that episode soon. So thanks for watching. Bye.